Hello, welcome, and happy Tuesday. It's just past 7:16 p.m. Central Time. I hope you're all doing well on this Tuesday. Like I said, we are live, so feel free to drop your questions or thoughts in the comments. We may feature them on screen. Coming up on today's live broadcast, I'll be breaking down the latest cannabis news I'm hearing about. I'll be sharing interviews I recently recorded at the filming of a documentary, a cannabis documentary that I was invited to participate in. I'll also be talking about my recent appearance on a major cannabis news show and more. Plus, we might even take callers. So, folks, if you want to call into the show, stay tuned for that. If you're not catching this live and you're wondering, Cole, how can I catch the show live? I'd say the best way is to head on over to colememo.com/YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Once again, that's colememo.com/YouTube. This podcast is also available for streaming on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and other podcasting platforms. You can also find it at thecolememo.com. To support the show financially, head on over to colememo.com/support or become a patron at colememo.com/Patreon. That's colememo.com/PATREON. For just $3 a month, you can help keep this show going and get early access to my content. Once again, that's colememo.com/Patreon. But I'll just say one of the best ways to support the show is by hitting the like button, subscribing, giving the show a favorable rating from wherever you're tuning in from. All of those things help way more than you think. And I see that the comments are rolling in. We're going to start off with one of our first announcements for this episode. We have several today. This is an exciting one. It's a quick programming note. Going forward, the Cole Memo will be live every Tuesday at 7:15 p.m. Central Time, unless announced otherwise. I may still pop up with live or pre-recorded episodes from time to time on random dates, but Tuesdays at 7:15 p.m. Central Time is the time slot for
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
All right, in this first segment, we're going to watch a report that features a Schaumburg family fighting for access to a medical cannabis product here in the state of Illinois. It's a short report, and then I've got another exciting announcement regarding this report. So let's watch it first.
Schaumburg family launching a campaign to allow medical marijuana to be delivered over state lines. They say their daughter's health depends on this. Ashley Surin, inspired by Ashley's Law, which gave her access to medical marijuana patches in school. Her parents say the patches have kept her seizure-free for the last 8 years. But the company that makes the patches has moved production out of state, and current law doesn't allow the patches to be shipped here.
The patients are suffering. There needs to be major reform and legislation in the cannabis program and in the legislation as a whole in Illinois around the patients. We're being forgotten.
We reached out to lawmakers for comment, but haven't heard back.
All right, so the announcement is Maureen, who we just saw on screen here, this is Ashley's mom, will be sitting down with me to talk about everything that's gone on. We're going to talk about Ashley's Law, which of course was passed a few years ago. So we'll recap a little bit of history, but then we're going to be talking about exactly this issue and what they hope to move forward with. And I wanted to announce that in case any of you had any questions that you'd like to submit, to the family. I'll definitely consider that. Please drop them as comments below, and I would be happy to share them with the family. So that's the first exciting announcement. I'm really hoping that we can somehow make a difference on this issue. It's definitely a complex one, but I think covering it and discussing it is at least step one of even trying to tackle it and resolve the issue. So Curious what you all think, curious what questions you have. Drop them below, and I'd be happy to ask. So, people have been dropping comments. I appreciate you all for tuning in. We're about to segue to some updates that I have on cannabis specific legislation in Illinois. Legislators are back, and so we're about to talk about that. But I just wanted to briefly give a shout out to people that are tuning in. Cole Cram, you might even see just a small peek of Cole Cram later on. We've got a few interviews to play in this episode of the Cole Memo, so it's a good one. We've got a lot to cover. Daily Homegrown, thank you for tuning in. Really appreciate you for smashing that like button. It helps, like I said. I'm sure you know all about it since you got your own YouTube channel, but in case anybody else is wondering, it really does help. K&MJ Squared says, "Hey, Cole. Hey, I think I saw you this weekend. I could be wrong." Genetic Memory Farms stopped by. Some cat on the internet says they're working in the coal mine. I love it. My coal miners out there. Got to make sure I spell miners the correct way, though. You know what I'm saying? People that yeah. Anyways, so Brandon Krieger says that he just stopped in and missed the beginning of the episode, but doesn't Mary's make the same patches on the hemp side? It is a question that I plan to bring up. I think their issue is that the Mary's hemp patches only have CBD in it, and the combination, or the, for lack of better words, full spectrum version of the product, which actually includes THC. I could be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If Mary's does produce like an equivalent, I'll let them know tomorrow and remind them that hemp has been a solution to a lot of these problems, including specifically the one that they talked about in that report, interstate commerce. So definitely correct me if I am on target with that, or rather if I'm wrong on that and Mary's does offer, their patches with THC, please let me know. Someone said, you have to give me an update on that. I don't know what you're talking about, but clarify for me. We are going to keep the show rolling. We're going to talk about the return of the odor-proof cannabis bill. Looks, am I frozen right now? I don't know if I just froze for you all. I froze on my screen. I'll answer this question really quick before we segue. Genetic Memory Farms asks, what is the legal argument they're making for shipping medicinal cannabis between states? Is it to adjoining legal states, or is it passing through illegal areas? I think, the note that I took from the conversation I have had so far is that they just basically said this is medicine and it should not be a crime to get our medicine. And they would, yes, like to get it from another state. But they, I don't know if they have like a specific solution or not. And thank you folks for confirming that I'm back and that was just a hiccup. Hopefully that is indeed the case and we don't have any other issues as we move forward, covering the return of the cannabis omnibus bill and the odor-proof bill, which of course will protect us against police basically violating our rights. We'll be right back. Cannabis critique comments, ooh, that smell. And that's what we will be talking about briefly in this Illinois cannabis legislative news update. So the Illinois General Assembly is returning to session. I believe the Senate is reconvening this week, and I believe the House is expected to return shortly thereafter, but don't quote me on any of that. I've not been paying attention to exactly what their schedule looks like this year. I will say I was just listening to some Springfield Talk Radio, and they said something to the effect, and I don't know exactly what they meant by this, so I can follow up on it in the future. But they said something to the effect of this year's schedule is exceptional or maybe unique in a way. So do some research on it, I guess, and compare it to last sessions. But as a reminder, no cannabis related legislation had advanced during our last legislative session. We're talking the cannabis omnibus package, which was supported by some stakeholders and people from the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition for sure. It included provisions like allowing craft growers to start at their maximum 14,000 square feet. I believe it had some language with regard to like distribution centers. It was extremely popular and supported by the community because it would have allowed medical patients to shop at all adult use dispensaries and do that at the medical cannabis tax rate. So, unfortunately, it did not move any at all during the last session. But from what I am hearing, and I guess I will just say that if you want a more in depth and unfiltered recap of the last session, listeners can check out episode 239 of the Cole Memo, which features boots on the ground perspectives from advocates who were lobbying or advocating on your behalf at the Capitol. So I'll put links to those interviews and reporting in the show notes. Based on what I'm hearing from advocates, both the cannabis probable cause proposal that was known as Senate Bill 42 and the broader cannabis omnibus, which I can't remember the bill number for right now, do remain under discussion and on the table as we head into this year. Some of the people I've talked to within the industry have expressed optimism that cannabis policy could finally move forward this year, with a few suggesting that recent developments around hemp may have cleared space for progress. I think what I remember, that was the comment from one individual, and they basically said something to the effect, well, now that hemp's out of the way, we can finally get our cannabis, legislation. It seems like that topic was often used as a reason for why cannabis policy hadn't been passed. I've just heard that it hasn't had the support that it needs, but who knows what the actual truth is. I'm just telling you what I've heard. So, on the cannabis probable cause front, the legislation is expected to return under a new bill number. So it's no longer going to be Senate Bill 42. It's currently being revised and sort of discussed, I would say, with like attorneys from certain counties and some civil liberties stakeholders. So the right people are at the table. I'll probably be there at the table. So once I have an updated draft and bill number, I'll definitely be sure to share that information. And as I said earlier, for the Cannabis Equity Omnibus, there's no bill assigned at this point. One point that remains unclear to me, and I always just try to be candid that I'm learning as I go. I like to make the joke that cannabis is a gateway drug. It's a gateway drug to politics, which is what I've been learning about for these last 6 years. And so, because Senate Bill 42 did pass the Senate, but never got called for a vote in the House, I'm under the impression that it could just pick up and be called in the House. But I could be extremely wrong about that exact point. So I'll follow up on that as I learn more about it, but I had heard that from an advocate, and I was surprised to hear that because I thought both measures, specifically what was Senate Bill 42, would have to go back through the Senate. And the thing that makes me feel like if it's going to go back through, that it will have to go back through the Senate is if it gets a new bill number. But alas, I'm not sure. I will share everything that I hear as it unfolds. You'll definitely hear about it. As you all know, I've been covering this specific subject in depth with legal professionals, advocates. I've been writing articles about it, and I'll put links in the show notes if you'd like to check out some of my work. So I know that a lot of comments are coming in, and I do apologize for not getting to them. I'll acknowledge them here in just a moment, but I will just say Illinois legalized cannabis. They passed legislation to tax and regulate cannabis, as I like to say, in 2019, which of course was roughly 6 years ago. Since then, only 3 cannabis policy bills have been signed into law, and most of them have been narrowly focused on industry or technical changes rather than broad consumer or civil rights reforms. which is a lot of what I focus on. But I should give credit where credit is due. There have been some really good reforms since 2019 that I don't feel get enough focus. And so I just wanted to briefly cover them. And then I'll head on over to comments and try to acknowledge some of what you guys have been saying. So, just again, in the spirit of credit where credit is due, in December of 2019, Governor Pritzker signed Senate Bill 1557 into law. That legislation did two notable things. It required, this is a big one, by the way, this first one. It required the Secretary of State to remove medical cannabis patient and caregiver designations from people's driving records within 6 months. So I don't know if you remember this, but back in the day, if you had a medical card, cops could literally see your medical card holder status just by scanning your license plate, which is nuts because it's also, I'll just also add that I had a law enforcement officer do that because I wanted to see what it looked like when it showed up on their screen. And it's like literally in the section where your FOID and concealed carry license would appear. So it's like, can they have a gun? Can they conceal a gun? Oh, looks like they have cannabis. I just think it's funny that that information is all stored together because it seems unrelated, but just an observation I had when I saw them when I let them scan my license plate. The other thing that 1557 did that nobody really gives credit for is I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it authorized local governments to allow on-premise cannabis consumption at dispensaries, which whatever. I think those, no offense, but the ones at dispensaries are lame. They're regulated by IDFPR, and the rules are just like ridiculous. What was really cool was that it allowed retail tobacco stores open up consumption lounges. So if you had a retail tobacco license, and we've done interviews at a few of these locations, you can just open it up. In fact, I always say it's one of the easiest cannabis businesses to open up in the state because anybody can get a tobacco retail license. You just got to find a standalone building, and bingo, bango, bongo, you've got a Illinois cannabis consumption lounge. Now, I think the one trick you're going to have to figure out is how do you make money? But that's, business people, they figure that out. I will just say, like, I know Cannabis Critique was tuning in. Molly's joint is technically a consumption lounge licensed as a tobacco retail permit, which is why you're able to eat food inside. I mean, you could bring your own weed. There's a lot of flexibility that comes with doing that under the retail tobacco framework that I've heard IDFPR's rules have become more flexible with regard to consumption lounges, but long story short, I still think it's way overregulated. And if you're wondering, by the way, what I mean by IDFPR, IDFPR is the agency that licenses and regulates dispensaries. And so, as I mentioned, but just to make it a little bit more clear, there are two ways in which you can open up a cannabis consumption lounge in the state of Illinois. One, if you have a dispensary, and two, if you get a retail tobacco permit. Good luck getting a dispensary license. It's super easy to get a retail tobacco license. One more credit where credit is due. August 2021, Governor Pritzker signed HB 1443 into law, according to a fact sheet released by the Illinois Cannabis Regulation Oversight Office. The bill strengthened consumer protections by redefining a cannabis container to explicitly include the term resealable, which reduced the risk of law enforcement action based on claims that a container's seal had been broken. You broke the seal. It's like, yeah, as long as it's closed, I'm fine. You don't need to get me in trouble for that. And so that was a really big change that I felt benefited consumers specifically. So I definitely mentioned two changes: the medical cannabis notation on driving records and the cannabis container being redefined. Look, credit where credit is due. That was some good policy, but it's been a while. And I think the only other piece of legislation, because I just mentioned two, there was one other piece of legislation that decoupled, just doing this off the top of my head right now, I don't even remember the legislation number, but it decoupled 280E at a state level. And then it took like $40 million, and this was reported by IllinoisNewsJoint.com, from the Medical Cannabis Patient Fund and transferred it over to the Cannabis Business Development Fund. which is insane when you consider that the Medical Cannabis Patient Fund is funded by medical cannabis patients, sick people. And to loosely quote Representative Bob Morgan, who I read this on the show recently. Hell, I'm not going to be able to find it right now. It's in a recent episode, but he basically says, the Illinois medical cannabis program has an excess of money. And in the past, he proposed giving that money back to patients. So each patient would get like $250 because the program had too much money in it. Like it was only meant to fund staffing and, travel and other office related expenses. And they've ended up with a surplus. And part of that surplus went to funding cannabis businesses in the state of Illinois. Curious what you all think about that. I know a lot of comments have been coming in. I'm going to take a moment to read some comments, and then we will move on to our next story, which includes my recent appearance on a national cannabis news show. All right, so folks are saying the law is against crossing any state line, hoping that the move to Schedule 3 will help. Yeah, you gotta hope. Oh, yes, I did enjoy the gift. That's what you were talking about. Brandon said it does seem that Mary's hemp line does have less THC in their package, which confuses me. Nice to know that there's a patch recipe. I'll be sure to share that. Yeah, that's one of the things that they did mention to me on the phone. It's like, a lot of people have been offering alternatives, but they're just like, look, we know this works and we appreciate alternatives. But we know this specific product works and we'd like access to it. Brandon said Senate Bill 42 is dead and has to be reintroduced. That lines up with what I'm hearing. They're saying that there's going to be a new number. I just was unclear. Somebody else had told me that it could pick up where it left off or something. And I was like, I don't think it can, but I don't know. I'm learning. Genetic Memory Farms asks the age-old question, did they legalize it though, or did they make more ways to throw us in jail? Well, according to defense attorney Evan Bruno, they just created new laws to throw people in jail and made a narrow carve out for small possession of the plant. Cannabis Critique says it would be cool for a restaurant to have a small section for that. People would probably freak out. Yeah. Oh, you don't even get to skip the line at the only medical dispensary that would piss me off. The few times I have gone, I always enjoy being able to get priority because of my medical card. And Cole, that's great to hear. Cole Cram says Ventura is ready to put 42 back through the Senate, and it lines up with some things that I'm hearing. So really looking forward to that. Folks, I hope you're enjoying the show so far. We've got this next segment where I appear on a national cannabis news show. It'll be a quick segment. We'll briefly be talking about a dispensary closure and some interesting comments that I got in regard to that. I'll be sharing briefly, I'm not going to go through them, but a bunch of cannabis news articles dropped this week. So I'll maybe share some comments that I got on those, but I don't plan to spend a lot of time on that. We've got 2 interviews to play and an article about one of our attorney generals saying that marijuana dangers justify blocking Illinois users from owning firearms. Interesting stuff. We will be right back to talk about my recent appearance on a new cannabis news show. Here we go. All right, so just a quick programming note before we move on to our next segments. I will be appearing on Cannabis Coast to Coast News as an Illinois correspondent.
That'll do it for the B block, or second section of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. But when we come back, we will introduce you to our newest member of the team. His name is Cole Preston, and his website is thecolememo.com. He is a pro-cannabis advocate in his home state of Illinois. And next, you'll meet Cole Preston as Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
2025, the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. And with that, here is the full segment I submitted for this week's broadcast.
Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is the C block, or final section of this week's roundup of cannabis news here in the United States. Many advocates are familiar with the Cole Memo that was published under President Obama in 2013. At that time, the memo was written by Deputy Attorney General James M. Cole. It protected legal adult use states from federal interference. Then, during President Trump's first term, his Attorney General Jeff Sessions rescinded that memo in January of 2018. Merrick Garland, who succeeded Sessions as the Attorney General under President Biden in 2021, mostly reinstated it through his own comments when he was in Senate Judiciary hearings before he took over his responsibilities. So now you know the history. Meet Cole Preston, our new Illinois correspondent, who is an advocate and the host of a podcast and website called The Cole Memo. We welcome him to the team, and this is his first Illinois Cannabis Report.
I'm Cole Preston with The Cole Memo with this week's Illinois Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This week's story is focused on the release of the annual Cannabis Report for the year of 2025. The Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, which decriminalized the use, sale, and possession of small amounts of cannabis from a small number of licensees, requires the release of an annual cannabis report from the various state agencies that oversee the regulation of cannabis within the state of Illinois. During 2025, Illinois issued 93 dispensary licenses, more than any year so far. The Criminal Justice section of the 2025 Adult Use Cannabis Health Advisory Committee includes data on cannabis enforcement and incarceration outcomes. According to the report, 57.5% of those incarcerated for cannabis were Black or African American, and that compares with just 28.7% who were white, which is insane when you remind yourself that both races use the product at exactly the same rate. The data shows that cannabis enforcement in Illinois remains geographically and racially concentrated, particularly in Chicago communities that lack dispensaries. It just so happens that these are the same communities that have always been impacted by the war on drugs. Not much has changed since legalization, and this is a trend that has been reported on by the Chicago Tribune in the past. Unfortunately, in 2024, cannabis arrests in the state of Illinois increased to 4,058, which was the first year-over-year increase since the state decriminalized in 2016 and legalized in 2020. Now, I just whisked the surface in this report. I encourage you to read the full reports now at cannabis.illinois.gov or at my website, thecolememo.com. That'll do it for this week's Illinois Cannabis Report. I'm Cole Preston from the Cole Memo, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
2020.
All right, folks, that was my first segment on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Definitely check them out. I believe you can find them by looking up Pro Cannabis Media, and I think it's going to be a challenge for me. You guys know I like to do longer segments, but the time commitment I'll be working with this is 2 minutes, roughly 2 minutes per segment. So, hey, if you want a little bit of a shorter fix of Cole and a look at the cannabis news from coast to coast, check out Cannabis Coast to Coast News. They've got correspondence from each and every state, and it's definitely interesting. So check it out if you're looking to learn more. I do my best to cover as much as I can, but I'm not from I can't be everywhere all the time, and so it's really nice to see what Jimmy has done and bringing all of these cannabis correspondents from across the country uh, together to do a show like that. So, I don't know that I'll be on there every week. I'll be on there as much as I can come up with a report, which, as if you watch this show, I've got plenty of content that I release, but you also know that sometimes there are dry spells. So yeah, PCM has correspondents from all over the world now. So definitely check out Pro Cannabis Media, Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Try to put some links in I will have a link definitely to that episode in the show notes. So check that out after the fact, wherever you're listening from, I guess, except for twitter.com. There should be a link that you can click on that takes you to the full show notes. And I try to put all of the links for everything I talk about in the show, which takes some time. But I do that because I want and encourage all of you to do your own research. I've got my opinions sometimes, but I want you to come to your own conclusions. It's important. Some cat on the internet says CCCN is great. Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Been following them too. You're a great fit. Lots of young people over there. Hell yeah. So shout out to Jimmy Young and shout out to Mark the Clone Guy, who actually happens to be tuning in tonight. Mark, feel free to drop a comment and plug anything if you want to. I'll throw it on screen and give you a little shout out. I do appreciate you hooking me up and giving me that connection. So we're going to keep things rolling with a short story, and then I'll have some articles to share and some pre-recorded segments to close out the show. Folks, I hope you're finding value in this episode of
The Cole Memo.
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 The Cole Memorandums. The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo. This drug is dangerous. You cannot play with it. It's not funny. It's not something to laugh about. Good people don't smoke marijuana.
All right. So it's recently been reported by the Forest Park Review that a dispensary had closed, specifically Parkway Dispensary. And I'll throw this up on my screen here in a moment. I'd been getting questions about this. So I actually dug into, which I say dug into it. I just texted somebody that I knew from the company. But this is the first time I'd seen it reported. And so I'm sharing it now. They say Parkway Dispensary is closed. It's uncertain whether the Madison Street Dispensary will reopen after a year in business. So apparently this was Forest Park's first dispensary. It opened in September of 2024. I can throw this article up on the big screen here. Just over a year later, Parkway shut its doors in November. They put up a sign saying the business is closed due to technical difficulties. According to Google, Parkway Dispensary is temporarily closed, and ordering options for the Forest Park location have been removed from the Parkway website. Parkway Dispensary is a part of the 1937 Group, a company that grows cannabis and distributes it to more than 170 dispensaries across the state. The 1937 Group opened its first dispensary in 2023 in Tilton, Illinois, to sell its own products. And you can actually watch that grand opening. I covered it on the show in the past. I was the first person to smoke weed in that dispensary. Well, I take that back. Other people had smoked weed in the dispensary. I was the first person to do it on a podcast in that dispensary. So might throw a link in the show notes if you want to check that out. So I thought it was interesting. Parkway Dispensary still has 3 active business licenses in the state, according to the State of Illinois data portal. I'm sure one of those is that one in Tilton that I'm talking about. I don't really know where they have other locations. There's some other information about how they acquired it and who they acquired the property from. A little bit more about the person and I guess there's going to be another dispensary that will be opening. So I had covered this, like I said, in the past, December 5th. So this article that I've got on screen right now is from January 12th. And as they mentioned, it had been closed since, I guess, November. I had gotten some questions about it. I didn't really think much of it. But let's see. We'll put this on screen. So like I said, I received a few questions about a social equity dispensary in Illinois that's been temporarily closed. The dispensary was called Parkway Dispensary in Forest Park. You'll recall the article mentions that that Google says it's temporarily closed. I've got a screenshot of that here. I reached out to the people that I know from the Parkway Dispensary brand, and they mentioned to me that the Forest Park location had recently closed, which had recently closed wasn't actually their store. They said a separate group had been using the branding without their permission, and that the matter is now tied up in litigation. They added that situations like this continue to take advantage of the Illinois Social Equity Program. I also found this article, which I think was before they opened. And they talk about, I recommend reading the full article. They talk about how it opened and, 1937 group. And here's a picture of Ambrose. He's been on the show in the past. So yeah, just interesting story here. The details, like I said, I thought it was interesting that Forest Park wasn't able. Okay, I guess I should back up. They said they didn't get a response by the time of publication, so perhaps they did get a comment. But anyways, that's a quick story. Curious what you think. If you have any other thoughts, I'll probably just keep the show moving here because I know that's kind of a quick story and not a lot of sparkles and butterflies there, perhaps. But Mark says on Facebook, I'm the clone guy. So if you guys want to check him out on Facebook, and if you like clones, you might hit up the clone guy. Some cat on the internet says, good people smoke cannabis. I'm guessing that's in reference to my bumper that I have. So, all right, folks. Well, any other questions? If not, we're probably going to kick into our first pre-recorded interview for the night. We've just got two short ones that are fun. Like I said, I was and can you guys hear me? So weird. We're having technical difficulties tonight. I apologize. My question is, could you hear me the whole time? Or if you even noticed I was frozen. I don't know. It's okay. Let me know. We're going to keep the show rolling. Thank you, some cat on the internet. They say good now, but like when I froze, could you hear me? People are saying I'm laggy. Do I sound like a robot? This is no fun. All right, well. My question though is, have you guys been able to hear me the whole time? And then I'm gonna bump to the next story. That really sucks. So you're fine. They're like, keep it moving, Cole. Keep it moving. Okay, I will. Let's get this next story queued up. This will be fun. 3 more comments. You've been fine for me the whole time. Okay. Someone said when you froze, I couldn't hear you, but you're back. Audio's been acceptable. I appreciate you all giving me the feedback as we're live because we're live. So shit happens. And I want to make sure that I'm not just talking to myself and losing this whole fucking thing, right? Anyways, let's keep the show rolling. This segment In this segment, I sit down with Nick, aka Big Head. You might recognize Nick from his recent appearance on my show, though it has been a while. So if you don't recognize his face, we'll have him reintroduce himself in just a moment. I visited his gift shop. It's called Big Head's Gift Shop. It's in the St. Louis metro region. There are multiple locations, so look them up. Enjoy this conversation that I had with Nick, aka Big Head, at Big Head's Gift Shop. Here it is. Where are we right now?
Dude, we're at Big Head's Gift Shop St. Louis.
Hell yeah. Welcome back to the show. It's been a long time since you've technically been on my show. Can you remind people who you are and what you do?
Oh, yeah, sure. So my name is Nick. Some people call me Big Head. I am the CEO of Big Head's Gift Shop. We started off years ago online. We were like an online head shop called 420pipes.com, and we kind of evolved in the Big Head's Gift Shop. But it's kind of funny because we don't really do anything online anymore. We're kind of just brick and mortar at the moment. We have been the whole time. But yeah, so we're a full service like gift shop. We're mainly a gift shop. Really, we have a pretty big gift shop. And then we also have a 21 plus room that has like all of the 21 plus accessories you'd want, including a bunch of hemp products.
Nice. Well, maybe we do a quick spin around and just show. I mean, people can basically imagine what they can expect, all the things that you would need to enjoy cannabis flower, including cannabis flower. That's kind of the long story short, right? So your bongs, bowls, papers, and then of course we can step over here and show the people. And I've got some B-roll footage. You got your cannabis flower section, which is awesome. Looks like you got vapes over here, edibles. Anything particular you wanted to mention? Anything that sells like that's super popular?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like this is the Grape Ape. It's one of my favorites. It's 29% indica.
Nice. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
So what's so great about the hemp industry is obviously that there's a little bit more freedom on how we're able to like dispense our products to our customers.
Right.
How we're able to explain it. Like obviously in the dispensary space, you're not really getting to experience the cannabis at all before it gets to you. So that means that you're going based off of just the information that they're giving you, hoping that it's accurate and hoping that, you know, they're going to get the right thing whenever it's in your bag. Versus with us, you're going to get to basically do everything with it before you buy it.
One of the things I like the most about, just to extend your point briefly, is the fact that you don't have to, as a consumer, deal with like the arbitrary limits that a dispensary has. Like if I wanted to today, I could buy like, you know, a couple of ounces, 3 ounces or whatever. It's just like you would with any other store. That's my main thing. It's like your limit is your budget.
Yeah.
You know?
Which, I mean, you could buy me out if you wanted, you know. I mean, like,
right.
That's what's great. And, you know, even in other industries, too, like alcohol, like there's, like, limits that you have to, you know, hit with alcohol.
Sure.
But it's a much more reasonable limit than it is generally with cannabis. Mm-hmm. We just went to Colorado. I checked that market out. That was my first time having an experience in a legal market that's not really Illinois. I also briefly saw California. But, you know, this time we really took it in. Yeah. And I did think it's, like, insane how... with the world that we're related to, like, you know, there's multiple people that come in here and buy multiple ounces a day versus that's what your limit is for the whole day in Colorado, and that's like a liberal limit. You know, like some places are even less than that, and it's like that's your max allotment, and they have like a 7 gram max allotment for wax. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what? Well, why? You know, like what's up with this? You know, with alcohol sales, you just kind of have to track it. I remember working at Walmart, like, okay, somebody's buying a bunch of alcohol.
I'll step over here.
Yeah. It's a different scenario now, so.
Right. You said in Walmart you had to fill out a form or something?
Yeah, so like if somebody was buying like an absurd amount of alcohol, you know, like
really?
a whole cart full of alcohol, yeah. I never had to do one, but I was trained on it, you know what I'm saying? So.
That's super interesting. I mean, yeah, like you say, with cigarettes, it seems like, just to use another example, like in Illinois, you don't hit felony territory unless, and this is just like off of internet research I did, so people should Google this as well, but I'm pretty sure what I found was that 10,000 unstamped packs becomes felony territory. And if you consider that, that's like...
It's a lot of packs.
I mean, that's a lot of cigarettes. That's like probably like over 20,000 cigarettes. And, you know, because you consider... You get my point, though. To wrap it around to my main point, like cannabis, you can
get a felony with 100 joints, hypothetically, because the possession limit's 100 grams for felony territory. You get my point, where it's
Right.
like you don't enter felony territory with cigarettes until you get like 20,000 cigarettes, but with weed, it could be 100 joints.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, 100 joints for somebody like us, that's not even that many joints.
Really not, dude.
You know?
It's really not. You go through it in like a week.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. Well, another thing that's been great about our model versus like the dispensaries and stuff is that we can be a little bit more diverse in our offerings.
Right.
So like even back over here, we do have the 21 plus, like more 21 plus stuff with like the slot machines. But then literally everything else up front, and this is only available here in Hannibal. We don't have slot machines in Illinois actually.
Okay.
But everything else is like mainly gift shop. Now it is post holiday season, so, and my newest gift shop. So we're looking at some bare shelves right now, really. But you know, this room gets quite full, and we do, you know, quite a lot of sales here in the gift shop section.
I like the pillows.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
That's funny.
And then another thing too that we do every time at every store is we have like custom murals made. So each one, I mean, it has a lot of the same elements. We have our handsome founder and leader, you know, always painted on the wall, you know.
And you like, I mean, how did you? What's the backstory behind the name Big Head? When did you get it?
Well, that's just what they called me growing up, you know.
Okay. Okay.
No, we were looking for a bunch of different names, and we were throwing different stuff out there. Originally, it was like the Head Shop. Then we switched to like, you know, the Big Head Shop, and we just kind of eventually settled on Big Heads. You know,
I like it.
And then I just thought, as a cheeky little way of like explaining our knowledge when it comes to like the hemp industry and stuff, since that's what we're known for, obviously. We have like a lot of knowledge behind that. Our slogan was "We know it all."
Yeah.
And then I just started calling myself Big Head, which is, I think, funny for somebody whose nickname is Big Head.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is our St. Louis mural. They're all done by Corey Niff. He's done every single mural of ours. This like style right here is kind of his signature style. This mural is different from my other stores, but you know, they all incorporate a lot of the same elements. This one's kind of like telling the story of kind of where we came from and where we're at now. You know, we incorporate a lot of St. Louis themed stuff. Like we got the cardinal up over here, we got the blues thing over here, and we got like even the arch. It's like a storybook type thing, which I think is cool. You know, it's trippy.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And yeah, same thing.
That's
in
awesome.
St. Louis.
I loved your original response to my question. It's just what they called me when I was growing up.
I told people that at the grand opening of Hannibal, they're like, "Why Big Heads?" I was like, "That's just what Mama always called me." You know? That's it.
So, Big Head, tell us why. Tell the listeners like what we're doing today, like why I'm in Missouri.
Oh yeah.
Maybe we can
sure.
just give a small tease.
Yeah. So first of all, Kentucky sucks. No. So obviously there's a bill that's been passed that's threatening the entire hemp industry. So it's not just threatening like THCA sales. It's not just threatening Delta 8 or anything like that. It's threatening the entire like CBD market, the full spectrum market, everything. And so what we're doing here today is we got together with some hemp producers that are doing it right, and which is really the majority of the market from around us. So a lot of people that we're partnering with that are making clean products, that are making the full spectrum CBD products, that are all, you know, explaining how this bill is going to impact their business, and also showcasing the good things that they've been able to accomplish while they've been in the industry. A lot of people that are in the industry are, like on the hemp side of things, are in it because they're passionate about the market, which is something that's totally missed. You know, when we're looking at the cannabis market as a whole, it's separating it between the two markets, the hemp and the marijuana side. It's clear to see that the marijuana people are all, you know, majority of them are all going to be like big corporations that don't care about their products. They don't care about anything except for the margins. And a lot of people that are in the hemp industry are in the hemp industry because they love the industry, but they don't have the funds to be, you know, doing the marijuana side, which is another reason why I wanted to do this documentary in the first place, because I feel like, you know, especially as Americans, if you're not interested in the story of cannabis, you don't really care about cannabis, marijuana that much, to me, this does show one of the clearest examples of like cronyism, what's another good word for like corporate politicians being bought out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Hey, welcome to Big Eds. We'll get
Oh,
you off camera.
yeah,
We'll
we
get you
won't
off
have you
camera.
on camera.
So yeah, I mean, like that's a big reason. That's a big reason for us doing the documentary is because what is that? Why can I not?
I mean, it's like campaign finance. It's a big issue in this country where companies can basically pay for legislation that favors their business model.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's
I don't know a
happening.
shorter way to say that, though. I think that's what
Yeah.
you were looking for.
Well, yeah, and also like I mean, it's a multifaceted issue.
Yeah.
So hemp historically has always been attacked by multiple different groups of power. You know, 100 years ago, you're getting attacked by oil companies and paper companies and, you know, everything like that. And then as well as the government, who is having a bad economic conditions going into the Great Depression. They want a scapegoat, so they rebranded hemp as marijuana. When they originally made, you know, hemp illegal, they didn't even know they were voting for that because they had classified it as a whole new drug based off of, you know, Mexico. So now we're doing the same thing. You know, there's a lot of propaganda coming out about, you know, scroveting and just, you know, cannabis use in general, as well as a lot of misinformation that's coming out about multiple, you know, hemp products, and a lot of cronyism involved with this law passing in the first place, where it seems like maybe alcohol lobbyists had a huge impact on the, you know, the outcome of the bill. And it's kind of frustrating to see because from an economic standpoint, you're losing 2% of the market, or 2% of jobs. We're talking about $26 billion. It's a huge market. And that was 3 years ago. It's only grown since, I mean, I've been in the industry selling hemp in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just based off of my growth alone, like, I know that the industry has been booming. So the fact that it's going away, it doesn't make any sense, especially whenever we've already seen the prohibition create a black market. We already had a thriving black market here before it was legal. And then when, you know, marijuana came in, well, legally in states like Illinois, all it did was inflate the prices on the black market and make people richer.
Right.
So the situations that they're creating right now don't make any sense logically. Right now, for me personally, with hemp, this is the most legal that cannabis has ever been, from our parents to our grandparents, whatever, for the last 100 years. So it's really important, you know, if we lose this fight, you know, we're taking a huge step back when it comes to freedoms. A lot of people say that it's a loophole, but it being closed down as marijuana was the original loophole anyway, you know.
Right.
Because, like, again, I reiterate, like, people consumed hemp as part of everyday life. Ben Franklin wrote about hemp and how much he loved to smoke it. The Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper. When the World War II came by, they made a sanction that everybody had to start growing hemp again. Whenever a bunch of the original colonies were coming here, it was a requirement that people grew hemp.
Yeah.
That's how essential of a plant it was. So now the same thing's happening. It's just history repeating itself. And I just wanted to be able to showcase that a little bit with this documentary, as again, you know, showing off the good people too.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any faith or optimism that, I was telling you earlier, you know, we've seen hemp win, hemp quote unquote. I actually like to call it just people that are selling cannabis under a federally descheduled framework, because hemp just confuses people. Like, I know that's what it's called, that's the arbitrary legal term, but it just confuses people. And so that's anyways, though, my personal point aside, do you have any optimism that we will be able to retain some of the great things you have? And the reason I ask that, like, I feel cautiously optimistic because we've seen, again, quote unquote, hemp win so many times, whether we're talking Texas, Illinois, Florida, you could even argue, and many other states that have started to like codify regulations instead of ban. Do you have any like hope or faith that like we won't see a complete ban?
So I mean, you know, I'm a realistic guy. I've been with you before. I've watched us win over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic because of the fact that this is going to be such a huge impact to the economy. Obviously, the administration that we have right now, main talking point is the economy. So if they're going to really consider that, then this would not make any sense to, you know, do at all.
Right.
So from that standpoint, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic at how many of us have come together to even do this project and other projects that are happening, you know, across the nation, and how many people are, you know, are rising up to educate and speak on this thing. But also, you know,
I'm gonna turn over here.
Based off of that, I have optimism. However, I mean, like, look, we know the 2018 Farm Bill wasn't intended to open up a bunch of the stuff that it opened up. It just wasn't. That's why it was closed by the same person that wrote it, right? I don't think that they meant to absolutely eviscerate the hemp industry as it is, but I also don't expect them to move quickly either. I think the only reason that they would is have like a selfish reason to like run an election or a race or something. And I don't really think that our leadership is gonna care enough to do anything without us coming over and being loud enough about it. I think more people need to be loud about what's happening.
Yeah. My last question for you, and we can get back to having a good time. Not that this isn't fun too, but what do you think you'll miss most? Because what I've said today and what I've been saying is no matter what happens, hemp happened. Because like you said, it has been, whether or not you agree with it or whatever, it has been the freest the cannabis plant has ever been. I thought you put that really well put. I mean, I think it's easy to use that, but what do you think you would miss most if we enter a post-hemp world as it's defined today?
The community, dude. I mean, I've been on the entrepreneurial side of it for a long time. Because of that, I've been to a lot of events and done a lot of cool stuff that I wouldn't have, maybe even thought to do otherwise. And I've met a lot of other people that I might not have hung out with otherwise. But also, I mean, from the entrepreneurial side, it's brought a lot of different personalities together to come in and make something cool. I mean, we created an industry from scratch, like not all of other opportunities have been created like that. On top of that, because of how free the cannabis plant has been and the opportunities that we've got because of hemp, we've had things like the Keefy Cannabis festivals. I've had 420 festivals and stuff like that. And those are some of my best and most favorite memories ever. I mean, you go to a concert, there's going to be weed there. That's just the way it is. We get that. But now, I mean, like when we went to the Afroman concert, we sat up as a vendor over there. We're selling the THCA products right on the table. Everybody's getting what they want. We got the ability to give them the type of experience that they're looking for, and come together with a bunch of like-minded people. You know what I'm saying? Plus, just like from our standpoint, being able to access the level of hemp that we've been able to do and throw the events that we have, like with hot box tents, stuff like that, that does cost a lot of hemp and money, has been, that's definitely been like the highlight of my life. So moving forward without that, it's definitely going to suck. I mean, you're seeing a lot of people that are kind of giving up hope in their business and, maybe taking a step back and doing stuff that, maybe might be more grown up to. I don't know. But they're just, going to live normal lives at this point. Meanwhile, we've been able to make a wave and do cool stuff over the last few years. And we've been able to help people, with their medicinal health benefits. I mean, we have a lot of people that come in because they have access to products here that they wouldn't get otherwise, even at the dispensary, that right now are going to be around, but are going to be either too costly to manufacture or illegal because they're full spectrum, broad spectrum products.
It's crazy. Any parting words? Anything you want just the audience to know, or anything?
Yeah, I mean, well, number one, call your local representatives. Like, tell them, hey, I want hemp. Even if you're in a local state, especially if even if you're in a legal state, and especially if you're in a legal state, because a lot of the marijuana people are trying to close us down. Why? Because we're the people that are actually competing. We're the people that actually, care about the market. We're caring about bringing a good product to the market. We're using our products. And then aside from that, selfishly, follow us. It's Big Heads Gift Shop. Just follow us.
Hell yeah. And I'll have the links in the description, folks, if that's easier to find. Just check out the podcast description, and you can check out Big Heads on social media and online. Well, cool. Thank you, dude. I really appreciate the time. And folks, come on down. Where are your locations right now, at least as of today?
Boom. We got 230 South Shady Street, Jacksonville, Illinois. We got 501 Union Street, Hannibal, Missouri. We got 8326 Olive Boulevard, University City, Missouri.
Sweet. Cool. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you, brother.
All right. That was fun. That was a cool time. And folks, does anybody comment if you want to call in and we can make space for you? I also just hit up Nick because somebody asked how he feels about Schedule 3. I said, I just let him know that his interview is airing right now. Some cat on the internet says, excellent. Cool. Well, I think Genetic Memory Farms might really appreciate this next interview because I sure do. We'll talk about it here in just a moment on the Cole Memo. All right. So the reason I think that a lot of people will appreciate this next interview is because I've been getting look, I love as I've said, I've loved hemp for simple reasons like being able to use my credit card, getting it delivered to my door, being able to have as much as I want whenever I want, give people as much as I want whenever I want. I remember when I aired my mini documentary at Blue Island Beer Company, and you can watch that by the way at colememo.com/minidoc. I was able to give so many people THC drinks. I've like brought this big ass cooler full of THC drinks, and it would have been so complicated to do that with cannabis from a dispensary, and it is the exact same thing. In fact, a lot of the products that you see around now are produced by the same people that make them in dispensaries. So the reason I think this next interview is going to be great is because I've been hoping that and look, I'm probably like too optimistic, but what I've been hoping this whole hemp ban, quote unquote, would lead to is finally some unity because I hate how the whole topic fractured the community. I'm hoping that it provides some unity for the whole movement because, like I said, like I've been saying about the whole hemp issue, I like to put it shortly. We need to take the best parts of the policy and leave the rest. So if you have concerns about what's in the product, like there's a very simple solution to all of this, and then we're going to get into this interview. Like I say, I'll say the solution here in just a moment, but I'm really happy with this interview because it seems like this might bring us all together to deschedule the plant entirely, which is what we really need to do. We need to treat it like tomatoes. And, and by that, I mean, there's room for corporations, there's room for small businesses and craft, growers, if you will, that can share their wares at the farmer's market. We should be able to share our harvests with our friends. Like that should not be a problem. We should grow more than we need to overgrow, right? And so I'm really hoping, call me too optimistic, that this leads to some positive change. But this interview that I'm about to play really made me feel like we're on the right path. And I'm really optimistic about the future. So I hope you enjoy this little this segment. So, we are having a little bit of a difficulty here. It's live.
Today even is. It's January 10th, 2026, right? Did I get the year right?
I think that's right. It's hard to keep track.
It is hard to keep track. It's been a minute. I couldn't even figure out when the last time we had you on the show. Can you remind my listeners who you are and what you've done in the past?
Yeah, so I'm Rachel Berry. I'm the current CEO and founder of the Illinois Hemp Growers Association, and we started in 2018, and we've been out educating the community, farmers, business owners, lawmakers, organizations about hemp since 2018.
And remind my listeners at a high level, everybody's talking about this impending hemp ban. Can you just high level, what happened and how has this resulted in an impending hemp ban?
Well, after years of what seems like impending doom, the federal government kind of finally stepped in and said, hey, we're shaking things up, we're changing things, and you're not going to be able to do hemp like you did over the last 7 to 8 years, which really sucks.
Yeah, it's the end of an era. If this comes to fruition, it truly is the end of an era. So, and as a result of that, you've made the announcement that you might be like stepping away from sort of the hemp game. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, so the IHGA, that's true. I am going to be stepping out of my role as, executive director and CEO of the Illinois Hemp Growers Association. I will still be around as an advisor.
All right, folks, one moment. I am going to switch this,
Even as it's January
and
10th.
I'll get us back to where we were. I apologize. We're live here, but I believe I've got a sound corrected version of this, so there's not so much background noise. I apologize. Here we go.
Let more leaders do what they do best. Executive director and CEO of the Illinois Hemp Growers Association. I will still be around as an advisor, but it's time to let more leaders do what they do best here in Illinois and in regards to hemp. And for myself, it's taken a long time for me to wrap my head around it. Not only years, but then just like the past couple weeks, kind of coming down off of I keep telling everyone sorry for crashing out. But it was really jarring news and really frustrating after years of advocacy at the state level to see that the rug is, kind of been pulled out from underneath us at the federal level.
Yeah, that's just, it's crazy. Do you have any hope that, look, we've seen hemp win so many times, whether it's, things that you guys help to, movements you helped to organize within Illinois or Texas, like that was a big win. People thought hemp was in the corner, that it was dead, and it was just a matter of time. And I've just seen this play out so many times. Do you have any hope or faith or what have you that somehow descheduled cannabis will retain any of what we basically got with hemp via the 2018 Farm Bill?
I really wish I could, but from what I have experienced myself as an advocate, not just at the state level, but at the federal level, I just don't see it happening. I don't see hemp staying the way we've all known and loved it over the last 8 years. I don't see that staying. I think we're looking at a dispensary model for hemp moving forward. Yeah. Unless you're a fiber or grain grower, I think that things will stay largely the same. It seems like there's might be some kerfuffle with genetics and how easy it's going to be to get genetics moving forward. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a big change.
Yeah. So basically it looks like the future is that cannabis will go back to being treated as a controlled substance. Like you said, they'll have to go back to Schedule 1 dispensaries, essentially.
Yeah. That's what that is what I think. Yes.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you've been sort of seeing a lot of crazy things happen. Can you give us a little bit of insight? I know that you've been involved in cannabis policy in so many different ways. And so you've seen things probably that I haven't had the privilege of seeing, or others haven't. You've heard conversations that others haven't been able to hear. Can you tell us a little bit about what has troubled you behind the scenes? Because I get the impression that there has been some troubling conversation that you've been privy to.
Yes. Yes, I've heard a lot of conversations. And Cole, it's been, like I said, I know I crashed out over this, but like the federal organizations and nonprofits have really kind of sold us out. We've all been pushing toward this message, whether it's at the state level, crafted by a small organization like the IHGA, or, some of these national groups have tons of money and lobbying power, and powder maybe. Yeah. Slip of the tongue. And it was like they kind of strung us along, thinking like the example in Texas, look at all these little wins, we're rooting for you, we're pushing for you, only for in the 11th hour for them to scale back and start pushing more for what in my observation is alignment with big pharma, alcohol, tobacco, and kratom even.
Yeah. And what do you like? What specifically made you feel that they were aligning with those parties?
Oh gosh, let me see if I can remember like the moment. It was like hemp 3.0, where it's like, hey, this is before, the big news dropped, a couple weeks ago. So I think I started to catch on that this was happening about summertime. And Cole, that I was interviewed by the White House this year.
Right.
I was interviewed to be Deputy Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs, which is a huge fucking deal, pardon my language. And I think that being that at that level of understanding hemp, I could kind of see it coming a mile away. And, I started having the conversations that, folks in Illinois should be paying close attention, especially if you own a business. You should be paying close attention starting in the summertime. And I think I can't remember when the hammer really dropped for me, when the aha moment. But like I said, I think it was hemp 3.0. I started seeing that circulating on LinkedIn, and I started reading more like, what is this hemp 3.0? And it's the idea that we're moving to hemp 3.0. We've had 1.0, which was the early stages, and we had to refinagle and pivot. And then, with COVID and all that, then we had hemp 2.0, which was more deltas and intoxicating types of cannabinoids. And now it's like, well, now we're going to hemp 3.0, which is all about fiber and grain. So, when you see that kind of language coming from the top down, something's fishy, something's up. And I'm a curious person. So just asking questions, or just literally not having my questions answered. I think the silences were a lot louder than some of the responses that I got. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Maybe just a little bit more on that, and then we'll segue to two other subjects, and we'll head out. You've seen people within the hemp industry start to sort of, for lack of better words, I don't even know if this is the right word, make consolations or sort of give ground. For example, I've seen people say, well, we'll give up smokables and vapables, but we'll keep drinks and edibles.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that you nailed it. Like, it's really a beverage carve out. Like, that was the big aha moment for me, was when I started reading and hearing little bits during the summertime about beverage carve outs. And I know you've gone into it on your podcast, obviously why that's a bad thing and why that's a sellout move, and how you're letting tons of farmers and small businesses down, under that regime, which really helps the alcohol industry. These folks are getting their cannabinoids for dirt cheap from China, from South America. Like, this is not going to help the American farmer to switch to, beverages, or to think that beverages we're going to throw you a bone, you can still make beverages. No, I don't think so. Again, I think I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
The beverage carve out. I don't know.
It's all good. I just think it's interesting to hear people basically they're willing to give up something, and it's what I've basically heard some people, stakeholders, say, if you will. It's like, well, the dispensary sells a lot of smokables and vapables, and so maybe they won't be as upset if we just agree to like a low dose beverage carve out, because we'll get people exposed to cannabis, and then if they want more, then they'll go to the dispensary. That seems to be the lot. They're like, well, how can we share this economy? And it's like,
the 2018 Farm Bill made this legal,
right?
Like, open the doors for these businesses, and to say, like, no other, not that I'm aware of, no other industry has like anti-competition, that they'll just shut down your competition. I've never heard of that before. And I know you've brought it up, restaurants start and they fail, and that's just how it goes, So to say that like there's that this is about competition or making things more fair, I would say, like I said earlier, the people who paid all that money for an Illinois marijuana license should be very angry at the state.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be redacting movement federal movement away from prohibition. They should be embracing it and changing. Everybody hates the dispensary model. Everybody hates the way the dispensaries work, the way they're taxed, the way the funding gets spent, and the behind the scenes stuff that, especially in Illinois, we're not privy to. It's corruption. And with hemp, we had the opposite of that. And for, our government to say, this is the direction we're moving now after, so many years of, data, like hard data that we can see, whether it was actually a public health crisis, it wasn't, or, if it's really hurting the state, not getting enough, money, really money is what it comes down to. So that they're backtracking to align with like money and in special interests. Like that's all that it is. This is a special interests move.
Yeah. One thought that I just had that I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on this. If you don't, it's okay. We can just move on. But you have to imagine that in some of these big marijuana meetings, when they have like all the executives and maybe some lobbyists and policymakers inside, you have to imagine, especially since a lot of them started to get involved, that they had this whiteboard of pros and cons of supporting or not supporting a hemp ban. And, it's funny, many people will say and point out that, like alcohol funding was behind this appropriations language or whatever. And it's like, okay, that may be the case. If people like that supported the bill, my problem is like, I was upset to not see more cannabis companies fight for the good things from cannabis policy. In other words, even if they didn't support the ban financially, they definitely didn't fight against it with their voice. And I guess like my thought that I'd like you to see if you have any thoughts on, I just imagine, like I said, there was some boardroom meeting where they're listing out the pros and cons where it's like, well, we could have banking and accept credit cards and license our brands. And those are all good things. But on the cons side, small farmers have access to the market. We have to deal with interstate competition. And so there was some evaluation that they did where they're like,
it's money, Cole. It's money.
Yeah.
They make a lot more money keeping it under lock and key, period. And that's, why we couldn't come to some different arrangement as, the IHGA has been trying to do for several years, as many other states have been trying to do. Why we couldn't come up with something, we fought against taxes and new licenses and because things were working well the way they were. Some things needed to be tweaked to be a little sharper. We were in favor of and still are in favor of, better regulations, better testing and labeling, 21 and over, and having our health departments regulate this. But for whatever reason, that dollar sign is just greater than common sense and common good.
And then we'll move on to the last two questions. I've been hearing some talk from the marijuana licensees in the state that say, well, now that hemp's out of the way, we're finally, after 6 years, going to see some cannabis legislation move through the House and Senate and get signed by the governor. Are you as optimistic for those license holders as they are for themselves now that you're quote unquote out of the way?
I don't know if I have a good opinion on that yet. I mean, I want to say like just off the top of my head and heart, no. But I guess that really is in the eye of the beholder, what they value. And I think what I value and they value are different. So yeah, I don't have a good answer for that.
Cool. Well, two last questions. This one might be quick, and then the other one is about your future. So just briefly, you're in touch. I heard you saying DK Lee's name earlier. He's been on the show several times in the past. Hope to collaborate with him in the future. My question has been, how does this affect our higher education institutions? I think it's missing from the conversation. A lot of people are talking about the impact on consumers and businesses, and don't get me wrong, I'm very passionate about those subjects. I probably don't have to explain that to you, but we should remind ourselves that the 2018 Farm Bill restarted the modern era of cannabis research. I've reached out to some of these programs and they don't know.
Yeah.
Do you
have any sense on how they're feeling or what the future could look like?
I think they're probably feeling the crush and the crunch as much as we are, and the uncertainties are probably really nagging at them. I also think this is going to be a problem for universities. I'm curious to see how they maybe work something out. I know that there's a number of universities in Illinois that students were still not touching plants. They're literally putting you through school, teaching you about plant biology, and you cannot touch a plant. So, like, are we going to revert so that we've been getting along making money and none of these students had to touch plants? Are we going to go not let any of these students touch plants, or come up with some way to work closer with dispensaries? I'm not sure, but I don't envy them trying to figure it out right now.
And I just want to emphasize just briefly, like, as you said, and I'm aware of those programs where they're not plant touching, but the few that were plant touching, we're only able to do that through the guise of hemp, and just study cannabinoids and all, and of course it's fiber applications, like DK Lee does that, I know, but they also have been studying cannabinoids and pharmacologically, like what the effects are, and it's just like, like I say, to see that potentially go, that's concerning.
Well, maybe there's some like Hail Mary with the 2014 Farm Bill that they could lean onto, where they let institutions of higher learning have access, but like I don't know if it was as hands-on with students, back in 2014. Sure. It was like mostly pretty top-notch researchers. It wasn't so student-led, and that has changed dramatically since then. So I'm hoping for the best for those kids.
Yeah.
And instructors.
I want to ask you about what you're doing going forward, but before I do that, I just have to make it's funny, everybody's calling this an impending hemp ban, and one of the things I've been having trouble putting into words is like, no, cannabis is just going to be rescheduled. And I'm not even talking about the process that was kicked off under the Biden administration. I'm talking, like, regardless of what happens with that outcome, cannabis in the form of hemp will be rescheduled. It was descheduled, and now it's going to be back to Schedule 1, or I guess if we move to Schedule 3, then that's what we knew as hemp will be. And so, I don't know. For me, it hits my heart harder when I say it that way, because hemp ban, of course, that sucks. But to hear it's like cannabis is essentially being rescheduled, it really, for me, like, really sets in just how much of a step back this is. But that's just a thought.
No, absolutely. I had a thought for that, and it escapes me while I was listening to you. To see it go back to being more restrictive, it's a real mindfuck, Cole. Yeah. It doesn't make much sense, and I think we're all pretty sorry that this is what's happening. Say again what you were saying, because I have a thought.
For that. So I was saying that it's not so much of a hemp ban; it's that cannabis is going to be rescheduled.
Yeah, and so like I come to that, like I've been having conversations since summertime, and people are like, "Well, they're going to ban it." It's like they're not. They're just going to make you get it at the dispensary. And like, that is heartbreaking to have to say that, to like be super matter of fact about it. It's not banned. You just got to pay more and get it at a different location, and it's treated as a control. You got to have the security guard buzz you in now instead of going to visit Stacy at Hempstock. Yeah.
And all the things that come with that, like the loss of your rights. But we won't get into that. What are you going to be doing going forward, Rachel?
So I am at a place where I have realized that my time as the head and leader CEO of the IHGA, has come to an end, and it's time to let some of the other leaders that have risen through the IHGA, take over, some of the business owners, and see what. It's so hard to say because the future's so uncertain, but we don't want to give up the thing. But I feel like I have served my time. I think I've done everything I can do. And I it's not that I'm not useful anymore. I still intend to stay on the IHGA as an advisor. But I just feel like it's time for other leaders to shine and to do good work. And the work that I'm wanting to do now, not just like work on my farm and, maybe grow some fiber and grain moving forward and do all the things that not all of them because I can't grow cannabinoids like I want to anymore, but a lot of the things that turned me on to hemp is like, I want this on my farm. I want to grow it. I want to eat it. I want to feed it to my animals. I want to build with it. So there's some of that in my future, but also, the last couple weeks of just thinking and just thinking of how the last couple years have been, it's always been cannabis, not hemp. So like for me, and that gives me like goosebumps to say it, it's like it's time to go back to the source, to the original goal, which is cannabis, no more prohibition, no more schedule. So I think the work that I really want to focus on and move forward with is the descheduling. That's where I'm going to throw the knowledge I've gained, the experience, the resources and relationships into descheduling.
I'm so happy that was your answer because, I'm glad you're going to be involved in the conversation. That makes me feel like I could probably invite you back on the show in the future, and that you'll have thoughts about cannabis policy moving forward. And like I say, that makes me really happy to hear. And I hope that this doesn't, that you don't take this the wrong way, but I don't view this as a change in direction for you. I think what you were fighting for in the past was preserving the progress we made. And now I guess you could say it's a change in direction because you're going to be trying to get that progress back. So I get, as I thought through that, I guess it is sort of you get what I'm saying, though?
I do.
I hope you didn't take that the wrong way.
No, I've heard that from a couple people that I've discussed this with, and they feel too that it just seems like the next natural progression for the way I've been moving.
Yeah, because I never knew you as somebody, and this is what always frustrated me about the conversation online. People would get so bent out of shape about the word hemp and the 0.3%. And I always felt like you always wanted the cannabis plant to be entirely descheduled. It's not that you loved 0.3% and dealing with that arbitrary framework. And so that's the part that gets me so frustrated is that, I know it's money, and I'm trying to basically argue against funded arguments right now. But it's just, like I say, that's the part that's been frustrating for me. It's not like you were fighting to preserve it just being hemp. At the end of the day, that's always been, from my perspective, your end goal. And so I'm just really excited that that's still your goal. Mean, albeit you're going to have to fight for what you already had, and that sucks.
It's going to be a whole new arena. And it's funny because while I was really into hemp, I always said, I'm trying to stay in my lane. I don't want to get too into the weeds when it comes to marijuana.
Yeah.
And, marijuana, hemp, cannabis. But now here, and it's just like, it always was. Yeah. It was always about that. And, like in some ways I'm kicking myself for wasting time or, but it wasn't a waste of time. It was all part of the learning process for not just me, but for everybody who cares about this plant. So yeah, the next thing, it's just the next thing.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to seeing more leaders and more exciting stuff come from the IHGA group that is going to stick around and carry on.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to try to put this into words to close. I've always thought of you as like the closest thing to like you and Chris in the movement you started. The closest thing to what this movement was supposed to be about. You had those roots, and like I know that this sounds simple, but just something as simple as when we went to the Capitol together, like we all smoked together. I've gone with groups of advocates in the past. And there's been talk of like, no, we can't smoke. We want to be respectful. And it's like, obviously we want to be respectful. We'll stay away from the doors.
Yeah.
But like, we should not be hiding this. You're feeding into the stigma, and you guys always did everything to normalize it. And like I said, I just always felt, and I'm not alone in this. I know Phil felt this way, who's come on my show. He's the one that really planted the seed of this thought. He was like, what Chris and Rachel and the Illinois Hemp Growers Association is doing is what the cannabis movement was supposed to be.
And I know I used a very simple example of consuming, but I'm just talking about like the principled arguments you took, the fact that you warded off reefer madness era talking points throughout it all. Like I just hope you're proud of what you did, and what you've done and what you'll be working towards in the future. Because seriously, like, I look up to you and Chris so much, and so just thank you for being an inspiration and for being like, I mean, I think history will reflect what you've put into this.
Thank you, Cole. Thank you very much. Like,
Yeah.
Thank you. You're gonna make me cry. Like, I put my whole heart into this adventure, and I still have a lot of heart to give. So,
can I hug you?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for being awesome.
Thank you so much, Cole. And I really appreciate your show. Like, it's keep going. Don't stop. I know I've heard you say on the show, I feel like I'm saying the same thing, or like you said earlier, I'm talking to a crowd that doesn't want to hear it or whatever. But it's so important. This work is so important. And you've got a long time ahead of you too. So I hope you stay positive. Like, we love you, Cole. Thank you for doing the Cole memo. And we want to talk about the Cole memo in the future still. That's not dead. That's coming back. So there'll be more time for that too.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And folks, I hope you found as much value in this short conversation as I did. We'll see you on the next one. Take care, everybody. Sweet. All right, folks. Dude, we're taking callers. Call in live now. What'd you think about that interview? The reason I said earlier that I thought you might enjoy it is because what Rachel is basically saying is that, and again, as I said during that interview, I felt like she's kind of always been doing this, always been pushing for descheduling of the entire cannabis plant. She was basically trying to fight to retain the access that we had in the form of seeds and, getting beverages and flour. Like, one of the things I covered recently on the show and I wrote about at thecolememo.com is the Illinois State Police report, and how for the first, we covered it earlier in my Cannabis Coast to Coast news segment, how for the first time we had a year-over-year increase in arrests. And one of the things they specifically noted in the Illinois State Police report was that some arrests and prosecutions had been complicated as a result of hemp. That's great stuff, in my opinion. To be completely candid, like that's awesome. So, but they basically were looking forward to the closing of that loophole so that they can continue. It's gotten in the way of cannabis prosecutions. It's complicated their job when they've been trying to basically prosecute people for being in possession of cannabis or selling cannabis. And I don't know. I that's one of the good things. Like I say, take the best parts of hemp policy and leave the rest. Like, if you're really, really focused on hemp being hemp, quote unquote, I get it. But the way I look at it is, as I said earlier in the comments, I don't know if you saw it, but call it hemp, call it pot, call it whatever. I don't really care. I know the accurate term is cannabis, the scientific term, the genus, if you will. But to me, it's not that big of a deal.
Most of this week's program is about a common plant, hemp. Hemp is a plant that has been illegal to grow in the United States since 1937. One of the uses for the hemp plant is marijuana. There are also many other uses for hemp, including making paper.
So, and with regard to one of the comments that was just dropped, somebody said when we're talking about something that involves patients, they're ignored in favor of business. Somebody just commented that. And My thing that I really liked about Rachel and what I was kind of saying in that interview is that they would come on the show and talk about how the hemp ban that was being proposed, it not only was a hemp ban, it also would have measurably increased the criminal penalties that exist here within the state of Illinois. It would have added $10,000 daily fines on top of the pre-existing Cannabis Control Act provisions that were never repealed from the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, which everybody like within the media will commonly say legalized cannabis, constantly questioning that because, and I'll display the article on screen right now. And again, it was in my Cannabis Coast to Coast News report. But I recently wrote about the report that I was mentioning, not only in that Cannabis Coast to Coast News report, but just now. Sorry, folks, I'm high. Probably don't have to explain that. Where the fuck is the goddamn tab I'm trying to share here? Sorry, folks, we're live. All right, so if you go to thecolememo.com, I'll show you how to navigate the site and find this article. Here we go. So, wrong screen. That was the interview. There we go. So there's thecolememo.com. And we go there, and then we go to high-level overview of Illinois annual cannabis reports. And then there's a section on the Illinois State Police. And then we can see all of the data. And I actually plan to add a section about exactly what I'm talking about. Where they reference that prosecutions have been complicated as a result of hemp. And so that's why earlier when some cat on the internet said stop arresting people for pot, period, I'm displaying that comment right now on my screen. That's like one of the main things I liked about hemp. I say it in air quotes, hemp. Gonna be completely honest, I forgot why I brought up. I was talking about how this would have measurably increased the hemp ban, quote unquote, in Illinois that had been proposed in the past. Would have added $10,000 daily fines on top of the pre-existing Cannabis Control Act, which was passed in 1978. And the CRTA, the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, basically just made like a narrow carve out for the criminal penalties. And so like when people say, or somebody said in the comments, that this was all about business, it's like, no, they would come on the show and talk about how this would affect home growers and medical patients. And what I mean by that is like, even myself, you can go to, I think, colememo.com/grow journal. And you can see the one time I did a home grow journal, which I might do another one in the future. I've been wanting to get my grow going again. Let me make sure this link is live. It's not live. colememo.com/grow journal. I don't know. If you look up grow journal on my channel, you can find it. But I made like a few videos. I'm actually pretty proud of how they came out. It was my first grow journal and it was fun. I need to do another one. But anyways, they could use something like that according to the hemp ban that was going to be passed at the time here in Illinois. They could have used a grow journal, if you will, if I did not have the my medical card. They could use a grow journal to like basically hit me with $10,000 daily fines for like 60 days. There was a maximum, don't get me wrong, but it was more than I could afford. I mean, I can't afford a $10,000 daily fine. It would have been fined as unlicensed activity, and that would have been on top. So it would be those daily fines on top of the criminal penalties that pre-exist from the Cannabis Control Act. And so that's where I come from, this issue. And I think I mentioned it earlier in the episode that I had a solution for it. And I don't know that I actually spelled it out because my brain's been all over the place tonight. But the solution is called the 3-pillar approach. And it's actually the approach they apply in dispensaries. And one of the things that I noted in one of the articles that I wrote about, I don't know if it was this article. It actually may have been this article. Yeah. If we scroll down to violations, in this graph here, you can see there were 4 violations for improper sale. I did some digging, and those improper sales, what they were sales to minors, and I don't mean the coal miners. Somebody the other night, I can't remember who, I need to look back. But somebody the other night commented and said the people that like my show, they're called the coal miners, like COLE miners. But there were 4 sales made to minors. I'm not talking about coal miners. I'm my fans. I'm not talking about the people that go into the mines and mine coal. I am talking about children. For the entire year of 2025, there were 4 sales, which I don't know that could be said about alcohol in the state of Illinois. And so, again, the dispensaries employed the 3-pillar approach, which is IDing, otherwise called age gating, testing, and labeling. So the testing would basically be like GMP standards. In other words, like anything that can't be in a food or drink nowadays, which look, a lot of crazy shit can be in American food. So don't get me wrong. But, at the very least, there's some standards to make sure that nothing like extremely crazy is in the food. So there's a testing standard, GMP certification, I think would be the way to go. So you got the testing standard. You've also got a labeling requirement, the 2nd pillar, or if you will. I think I'm on the 3rd pillar because age gate, testing, and now we're on labeling, the 3rd pillar. And labeling basically is just like anything else. Like adults should know what they're consuming and know what to expect. Like I've been drinking on this beverage, and I've been smoking on some home grow, which wasn't labeled, so that's not a good point. But typically with products we consume, we have like a general idea of what's in it, and so I think that's an approach that's applied at dispensaries for cannabis sales, and I think it can be an approach applied to all cannabis sales, regardless of where they are, with an exception of farmers markets. Folks, you can call in now at colememo.com/live. I'd love to take some callers. I think that that's the answer to the hemp problem. Look, just deschedule the whole 0.3% thing. It's silly. And I guess just to wrap up this rant, if you will, before we maybe have a caller call in, colememo.com/live once again. You don't even have to turn on your video. Drop your comments below, though. I can also display any of your comments on screen. If you have any questions, what have you, happy to field those. Do have one more segment. But I guess just to, like I say, wrap up this rant, I'm really hopeful that at this point we can all just focus on descheduling cannabis entirely with a 3-pillar approach for like commercial sales. And then we should allow everybody to home grow because it would be descheduled entirely. It would be treated like tomatoes. And I know this is ideal hope world, but I wish we could all push for that. It looks like some of my commenters are agreeing. Thank you for this. Yeah, this is from Southern Illinois University. I think if you go to colememo.com/higher-ed, let's see if this link is actually active. Say this stuff, and then I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I guess I don't have it set up. Yeah, if you go to colememo.com/higher-education, you can check out the episodes I've done with people. And I mentioned this in the interview that we just aired with Rachel. I don't know how these programs are going to be affected. I don't think Justin Leiby will be affected. I do think Dr. Lee, Dr. Jose Leme, Dr. Gage might be affected. Dr. Buck Hales is retired, so he's chilling. But he might be upset that the cannabis research program is halted. I should explain my shirt. So I got this shirt from Dr. Carla Gage. I think we explain it in the episode, which once again, you can watch at colememo.com/higher-education. This shirt actually isn't for cannabis. It's literally for like weeds, but it was just too perfect. The back, I'm not going to turn around right now, but the back of the shirt says weed science super big. I was getting breakfast the other day and this old dude was like, "Hey, I like weed science if you know what I mean," or something like that. I'm like, "Yeah, I do. I do know what you mean." So folks, you having a good night? We're about to wrap it up. In the future, like I said, we're going to be live every Tuesday, 7:15 p.m. unless announced otherwise. Unless announced otherwise. In the future, I don't plan to have shows that are this long. The goal will be an hour, but I had a few different stories to cover today in this episode of the Cole Memo. We'll be right back. So this last story I'm going to cover, I just really found interesting. Basically, the story goes, Raul, who's our attorney general. Well, let's just read the article. So it's from the legalnewsline.com. It was published on December 29th, 2025. And it says 6 years ago, Illinois lawmakers added the state to the ranks of those legalizing the recreational use of marijuana, in part using concerns related to racial equity and social justice to justify the decriminalization regime. Nonetheless, Illinois Attorney General has now told the United States Supreme Court that the state should still be allowed to cite, quote, habitual, end quote, use of marijuana to justify blocking people from owning guns. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul staked out that position in a brief filed with the United States Supreme Court on December 19th. Raoul and other lawyers from his office authored the brief, along with lawyers from the Office of the Attorney General of the District of Columbia, Brian L. Schwab. They were joined in the filing by attorney generals of 18 other states, including 17 of Raul's fellow Democrats from such states as California, New York, and I don't really care about the rest of that sentence. I'll have this show linked, or this article linked in the show notes, I mean to say. I just wanted to share an interesting part of this. I won't dedicate too much airtime to it. We'll start to close out the show. Please drop your comments below about this story or anything else as we close the show. I just found it interesting that basically Raul and his fellow attorney generals say that they believe habitual marijuana users who carry firearms present, quote, unique dangers to society. Raul and his fellow attorney generals say those include dangers when intoxicated and when otherwise sober. Indeed, this is a quote, indeed, the public can be endangered by the habitual drug users who experience ongoing psychological deficits that cause them to make dangerous decisions while handling firearms, committing dangerous actions that put others at risk, and expose themselves to unsafe environments to obtain drugs, end quote. Apparently, Raul and his fellow attorney generals wrote in their brief. So the last little bit I just wanted to read about this is that in the filing, Raul and his fellow attorney generals say that state and federal laws prohibiting marijuana users from owning and carrying guns should not be read to support applying the law to, quote, casual users. Sorry, I'm going to restart that. Quote, casual users of controlled substances, but rather those who are engaged in habitual use or addicted to controlled substances, end quote. Each state defines, quote, habitual, end quote, marijuana use differently. And yeah, it's just interesting. The question is, like, does medical cannabis use qualify as habitual use? I know that some people may not care about the firearms issue, but yeah. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. So I thought it was interesting, and I just wanted to cover it briefly on the show. We will be right back. Actually, you know what? Fuck that. We're going to keep it right here. We keep it locked in. That's the end of that story. I'm taking comments. colememo.com/live if you want to call in. Kat says, thanks, Cole. Thank you, Kat. If you guys haven't hit the like button yet, tune in. Smoking Pots and Pans, cool name. They say, let's call a spade a spade. The main issue the government has with home growers who don't have a medical license and people who sell it is that they aren't able to tax them. You're absolutely right. Smoking Pots and Pans, hitting it out of the goddamn park tonight. Genetic Memory Farms asks, so Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Did I hear that correct? Yeah. Tuesdays at 7:15 p.m. Yep. And we'll still I still plan to go live and do shows other times. Like I mentioned earlier in this episode, I'll be interviewing the mother of her name's Maureen Soren. We did that story earlier in this broadcast. If you didn't see it, folks, go back and check out the rest of this live broadcast. I'll have the link to the full live broadcast in the show notes if you're watching a segment, because I release segments of the show of the live show now. So Maureen Soren is going to be coming on the show soon, and so submit your comments now. I might be talking to them tomorrow is the point, and so I'll be releasing that interview. But if you drop your questions for them, that was the story that we covered earlier with the person behind Ashley's Law, the little girl. Her name's Ashley Surin. And basically medical cannabis was the only thing that allowed her to be seizure free. And one of the products she uses, which is like a little patch that she puts on her foot, they're not selling it in Illinois anymore, and they're running low on the stash. And there's other states that have the product still, but Illinois doesn't carry it. And unfortunately, you can't go and purchase a product technically from another state and bring it across state lines, because that's a violation of the Cole memo. And I don't mean this podcast. I mean, Google it. It's a thing. It's why the show's called the Cole memo, besides the fact that my name's Cole. But yeah, 7:15 p.m. We're going to be live other times, though, is how I got on that whole rant. Have shows other times and stuff. And I appreciate you all tuning in. If you haven't hit that like button yet, please do. I appreciate you all tuning in. Let me know if you have any other questions before you go, or if there's anything that you want me to cover. Or I just recently published on thecolememo.com a guest article. So if you want to write something that you might want other people to see, I guess, let me show you this. Kirsten Velasco, who's been on the show in the past, wrote this article on Vape and Prop, and I reached out to them and was like, can I republish this? They basically talked about how the medical cannabis program is in the rear view mirror, and all the different problems that come with it. I need to make sure to link my episode that I did with nurse Katie Sullivan, who's actually on the Medical Cannabis Advisory Board currently. She currently serves on the Medical Cannabis Advisory Board. In the past, she came on the podcast before she started serving, and we basically went through a whole list. We made a whole list, a whole spreadsheet of things that need to change with the Illinois medical cannabis program. It's a really, really great episode. A lot of stuff, unfortunately, still applies to this day. I'll try to pull it up really quick before we start to wrap up. We are wrapping up, so drop your comments, and happy to address them. So the problem with the Illinois medical cannabis program, I think that's the name of the video. Let's see here. Yes, it's actually what's wrong with the Illinois medical cannabis program. I'll throw it up on screen right now. This is back when I hosted the Chillinois podcast. And you can see it right off the bat. It starts with a report. You can find it on my channel, thecolememo.com. I can paste it into the comments if people want to check it out. It's a really, really good episode. Like I say, I sit down with medical cannabis nurse Katie Sullivan, and we do a really thorough rundown of what needs to change to better serve medical cannabis patients in the state of Illinois. And it's unfortunate that this video's 2 years old and we've not really made any progress with regard to some of these issues, but I'll talk to Maureen Soren more about that. We've got 37 people tuned in, which is really awesome. Looks like people, at least from what I can tell, between Twitter and YouTube. Crap, I feel bad. I missed the live stream on Instagram. I will just share it really quick. It's kind of funny. You can see a lot of people tuned in. Apparently, the state of Illinois tuned in. You can see that right there. CROO official joined the live stream. Doesn't look like they're watching now. I don't know how long they watched, but they were watching. Shout out to everybody else that tuned in. Life of Guapo, Barley Bee, Waffle House, Tehran, Tripster. All of you folks that have been dropping comments, I appreciate it. This is like Inception. This is kind of trippy. Throw that away. That's tripping me out. Anyways, hour and 56 broadcast, like I say, in the future at Tuesdays at 7:15 p.m. We're going to keep it at most an hour if I can control that at all. But we shall see. And check out Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I know I shared my segment earlier on in the show. It's great. It's a great program. They produce Pro Cannabis Media is how you can search them up on YouTube. They publish a lot of pro cannabis media. Wouldn't you know? If you haven't hit the like button already, please do. Once the broadcast wraps, if you wait for the broadcast to wrap, if you can, drop a comment, like not in the live chat, but in the other section. Apparently that helps out. That's what somebody told me. They said like make your just say like, yo, this was a sick live chat, bro. Smoke weed every day. And apparently that'll make more people see it. Wouldn't that be cool? If you haven't checked out colememo.com/minidoc yet, please do. It's sort of a culmination of the first 3 years of my work, and I'm really proud of it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and I guess I'll see you on the next one. I hope you all have a great week, that you're taking care of yourself in this new year, and I appreciate you all for tuning in to the show all the time. It really does mean a lot to me. So thank you. Take care, everybody.